Hello, and welcome back to our interview series. Today, I am joined by Dave of the channel Book Blather, and he has his co-host there on the seat beside him. I won't try to bother her too much. That's Olive, the multi-poo,
Okay.
very charismatic co-host.
The star of the show.
Yeah, I mean, of course. Anytime I have a cat on my channel, like, or any sort of animal, it's like, well, no one's going to care what I'm saying at this point. They have better things to say anyway. Let's start off with you just
Okay.
telling us a little bit about yourself, about Olive, about your YouTube channel, and the creative stuff that you do.
Okay. So yeah, so Olive and I have it's primarily really just a booktube channel. It's not really an author tube channel. Which was one of those things that kind of not started by accident, but was not I didn't became more than I had planned it to be. I used to just once I got back into reading more earnestly, it's just putting stuff into Goodreads, and I had like six friends on Goodreads. So one day
Mm.
I didn't really quite realize how big BookTube was at the time, and but I had started watching some, and so I just decided that well, let me start a BookTube channel. Maybe more people will see the stuff that we're reading. And I had originally planned to just do like one wrap up video a month. That was really just kind of like turning my Goodreads into like a video format pretty much.
Mm.
But then we got into it, and we were only doing the one a month. And one of the people that we used to, you get your you get your class of like booktubers when you
Yeah.
start, or author tubers, whatever. And one of the people that I used to run with, who's like much bigger channel now, but he made the comment like, you got to post more, you got to post more. So then we just started doing it, and yeah, then it turned into a whole big thing. So now we're now we're a lot more into it. And we do the typical stuff for a typical booktube channel. Is we do wrap ups, hauls, individual book reviews, the occasional tag here and there. And we try to be pretty like widely read, but we read a lot of horror, sci-fi, some fantasy. But we read graphic novels, we read a little YA here and there, and we read all other kinds of literature. We try to mix it up. So um that's pretty much the channel. I don't really have we're not probably the least experienced writer in the collection, so I don't really have too much on the writing front to talk about.
I don't know. There's quite a few people. We had an interesting mix where there's I don't know if I'd say half. I don't know the percentages, but we have a wide range of people who are very new and then people who are very experienced. And that's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things about how this collection came together because and also the fact that it's not all author tubers. Like obviously as someone who is published, you are an author who is on YouTube.
Right.
But I like that we have some channels that aren't specifically that. Like I was just talking with Brian from Bookish, and it's neat to sort of showcase a different element when you're talking about books. You can come out and say, okay, yeah, but I also write, and here you go. So I like being able to add that and promote that, and there is just a big range. So I would not say you're the least experienced, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
the genres you explore are very fitting with the Stygian Society for sure.
Yeah. Well, I didn't doing this, I'm sure you've had the same experience, even though you're more on the author tube side. Doing this really kind of changes you a bit.
Oh yeah.
And it changes your interests. And I until I started doing booktube, and I've been doing it, I don't know what, 2.5 years now. But until then, I read no horror,
Mm.
literally none, none at all. But that guy I was telling you about before, just a minute ago, that was like one of the guys that I ran with a bit.
Hmm.
Um, all he reads is like horror and transgressive fiction.
Okay.
And so he just got me into it, and he did some lives and had me on the lives to talk about a few things, and now it's one of the things I most read, and I don't think I read a single horror novel uh you know before 2.5 years ago.
That's very cool. I find that is a thing for sure, and it's come up a lot. I think in the last like two or three interviews I've done, and just talking about how things have changed, being on YouTube and getting into this community, because even when you start out not knowing exactly what's going to happen, like we all have sort of a vague intention. I think these days people don't really go into YouTube being like, oh, I'm going to go in and it's going to be my full-time job or anything like that. It's
Right.
just, this is a good way to sort of express a hobby, and then something winds up happening when you know, get out there and you get in the community, and it does wind up influencing you a lot.
Yeah, it really does. I look at like when I'm reading throughout the course of the year, so I have a mantle, right, in my
Yeah.
I I I call it the study, but everybody
Hmm.
else calls it like I built some bookshelves in there. Everybody else in my family just calls it the office, but I like to fancy it as a study.
I like that.
And so I have like a little fireplace mantle in there. And as I go through the books, I just stack them up there. I stack them in piles on the mantle, and I at the end of the year I take it off.
Mm.
And when I look at those stacks now, they're like a couple years ago, like I have a lot of books, right? As I'm sure you do. I have a lot of
Oh yeah.
books and all these books that I plan to read. And when I look at that stack at the end of the year, very small portion of that is like stuff that I already had that I had been planning to read for a while.
Mm.
I just get so bogged down with all the other stuff that people are telling me about or doing group reads. Not bogged down, that's the wrong word. I mean, it's a good thing, but my reading plans never go as planned, and I just end up reading all this other stuff that other people influence me to read as the year goes on. You know,
Yeah, it's similar for me, and except I haven't gotten into it as much as I want to, because I've gone through this period for a while. I wasn't reading a lot because I was very, as we were saying before we started talking on recording, I'm quite a workaholic. So I had a lot of
uh,
stuff going on. I was like, oh, I don't have as much time to read. But getting into YouTube and looking at booktube channels, I was like, I really need to get back into this again, especially if I'm going to work on my writing more, because you have to read if you're going to write.
right,
And now, like, the amount of stuff that has been added to my shelves, when originally I just started off thinking, okay, I'm going to get through what I own. It's
right.
not happening at this point, not anytime soon, because it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And now there's, piles on the floor, not in this room, but in our living room. So it definitely builds up a lot, but it's fun to see all that inspiration and learn about things you just never would have known about otherwise, and genres you wouldn't have explored as much.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've seen that challenge floating around, that read what you own challenge, where you have to like read, well, whatever, 100 bucks before whichever number you pick before
Uh,
you buy any new ones. I
I
don't even
should.
try to do that challenge.
I'm thinking that might be a good, because I'm good with challenges. They help me, but at the same time that would be really painful.
Yeah, totally.
It's
I,
like
I I would fail immediately.
yeah, and also in I don't know how it is in your city, but in Montreal, there are always these sales coming up, like
Yeah,
library sales.
yeah,
And I think that's a thing in a lot of places. And there's this particular one that Pay and I will go to, and the books are like $1. And we walk out of there and
yeah.
we each have a suitcase full of books. Like, I can't not do that. It's very
Yeah.
difficult stopping that urge.
Yeah, it's actually rare that I'll go to. What do you guys have Barnes and Nobles up there? Or you guys have like the
We
Waterstones
have
or
Chapters. I think we might have a couple Barnes
chapters?
and Nobles. I don't know if we have them in Montreal though, because Montreal is a weird, different place that's like a
Oh,
country within Canada. We have Renaud Bray and Chapters.
okay. Yeah, our big one down here is Barnes and Noble. It used to be Barnes and Noble and Borders, but
Oh yeah,
Borders
yeah.
went bankrupt. And but it's rare that I'll go. I like going to Barnes and Noble, but I don't go really all that much anymore because also really big into. I love going to used
Yeah,
bookstores and the book fairs and just seeing what you
they're
can
the
find in the
best.
wild. Right? It's just a lot of fun. And we have the same thing. We have a huge one here that I go to every July and never miss it. It's like the
Mhm.
biggest. So I'm in Connecticut. This
Yeah.
is, I think it's the biggest book fair in New England, they say.
Oh, cool.
And there's so much stuff. And the pricing scheme changes by the day. So, certain
Oh,
days but still, it's always either $1 or a couple dollars. And I just went a couple weeks ago, and I mean, bags I came home with. I
yeah.
can't tell you how many books I got there. So yeah,
Yeah,
I would never make it through that challenge.
no, no, it would be painful. The one we do that's our favorite is 2 times a year, and it's the for anyone who's in Montreal watching, it's the Westmount Book Fair, and it's It's so great. Like these, I don't know what it is, that neighborhood just has all the stuff that we both like. There's, philosophy, and then there's lots of historical stuff and classic fiction. And
Yeah.
we haven't, I think next time it comes around, we're going to do it properly because we never bring enough stuff to carry them, and we always wind up doing one day. But I think this time around, when it comes again, we might each just like bring a large suitcase and go 2 days because they keep
Yeah.
bringing new stuff out. So you'll be in there, and I don't know if it's the same for you. Like you're in there and you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to go, and then you see people come out with new boxes, and you're like, no, I gotta stay.
Yeah. Yeah. It would take me 3 days to get through this. And I could totally
Yeah,
do, I just can't devote that kind of time,
yeah,
but I'm like literally I'll go there and I'll literally be there for, I'll be there for 6 hours straight.
yeah,
And I won't eat, I won't drink,
yeah.
I'll just keep going. And all of a sudden 6 hours have gone by and it's like I still haven't gone through half the place yet.
hmm
But
we'll get coffees before we go in, and then we just like
yeah,
inhale the caffeine and just go on that as long as we can.
yeah, yeah. I don't know
So
what it is, but that's like such a joy. Like I can
yeah,
just spend all day just looking at books,
I
like
know. Well, especially like you said, like used books, book fairs. It's
yeah,
it's like a treasure hunt, right?
yeah,
Because sometimes you can find the craziest things, and a lot of the time people don't even know quite what they're putting out there, and you find something that is just such a treasure. Like
yeah,
we've looked back at some of the things we've got and just, casually looked them up online if it seemed like something really interesting, and the value is just way higher than the dollar that we paid for it. And it's just
oh
this
sure,
this cool thing to have on your shelf that would have been impossible to get otherwise.
yeah,
So it's the best way to buy books. I agree.
yeah. And sometimes you'll find things that you just simply won't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
But that happened to me this year. I found this old little hardback Dickens book of it's like
Mhm.
a collection of Dickens Christmas stories,
Yeah.
and I can't even find it online, or
Oh wow.
I can't even like really identify it. I know it's old, but I can't really identify what it is because I just can't find it.
Yeah, those are the best.
But yeah,
I forget which one I got. I got one of those like little those sort of smaller sized ones with the hardcover. It's all worn away and there's no
yeah,
information in those
yeah,
thin pages. I
yeah.
anytime I see something like that, I'm like, "Pfft, mine."
Right. Yeah,
So,
that's fun.
so given you are very much focused on books and you said you don't have as much, writing background, can you tell me like what inspired you to contribute to our collection?
Really, it's just my arm got twisted. Like um, well, to answer your question, what got me to do it was I have one publication before this, which
Mhm.
is Regina St. Clair does the, although I guess she didn't do it this year, but last 3 years she's done this anthology of this is for horror tubers.
Okay.
Right. So for horror tubers, just write a short story, and she puts together this anthology. And this last year was called Lurking in the Dark. This
Oh
was the
yeah,
third
yeah,
one.
yeah.
And I didn't even see the call for submissions because I haven't been actively looking to get published, even though I've been interested in writing for a very long time. I've never get my ass in gear to sorry, am I allowed to say
Oh
that?
yeah, yeah, totally.
Never get my ass in gear to do anything about it. So I'm not actively looking for stuff, but another booktuber that friendly with Mr. Morningstar,
Yeah,
who's also in this,
yeah.
he knew from some discussion we had, he knew that I dabbled in writing, and so he twisted my arm to do it, and really twisted my arm. Like he kept texting me, and so he got me to do it, and I just buckled down, of course, right up before the deadline. And that was different than the story for this anthology. That wasn't a deep one. That was just a fun horror story,
Mhm.
like a vampiric sort of tale.
Oh, excellent.
And so that was kind of like the taste, right? So then that got published. And then again, I still wasn't actively looking, but then Mr. Morningstar again was submitting to this.
Yeah.
So that's what caused me to do it. And the same thing I did, it was like I put more time into this one, but again, I was, just because there was a deadline that forced me to, that forced me to do it and get it done. And So that's what quote unquote inspired me to do it, was Mr.
Okay.
Morningstar.
Well, thanks go out to Mr. Morningstar because like
Um,
Pay and I both love your contribution. And one of the things we wanted in the anthology was that sort of philosophical element. And I think that
mhm.
you brought, dark horror as well as, discussion of ethics. It's a very interesting story, and I like the way you approached it.
Oh, well, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I guess now would be a good point to, without spoilers, give maybe a little summary, talk about your story a little bit, so anyone who hasn't read it yet can get interested in reading it because it is a really good one.
Yeah, so it's I always feel like I say too much about it. So it's basically a very, so the different things that I have, like a couple little projects going that I never seem to finish, but each of the things that I have going, they always seem to be more, I guess, what I would characterize as magical realism. I'm not really good about binning stuff into these different genres, but
Yeah.
that's the closest I can come up with, right? Is magical realism, and so or surrealism.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of what this is, like my other stuff, just like unnamed person in an unnamed place, right? Your unnamed city. And it's meant to be a very loose, sort of surreal retelling
Hmm.
of Dante's Inferno, which I don't know if that's already saying too much about it,
No,
but
I don't think so.
okay.
I think that's
So
a good thing to say about it for sure, because there's still a lot in there that's different.
yeah. Yeah, it's and I actually remember you talking to Sam about this a bit, and it's like a constant struggle because you don't want to tell people too much about your story. You want the stories for each individual reader, right?
Yeah.
You want them to interpret it and get their own things out of it, and whatever it means to them, that's what's important. What it means to that individual reader, right? So you don't want to give them too much, but at the same time, you're worried people aren't gonna quote unquote get it in
Yeah.
terms of what you intended, right? And so like this is like that previous story, Fun Horror Story. I don't really, I mean, a little substance to it, but I'm not too worried about it. Like this one, I put a lot into it, right? In terms
Hmm.
of both ethical philosophy a little bit, but
Yeah.
also in terms of a lot of symbolism with Dante's Inferno,
Hmm.
and you worry that it's all going to get missed,
Yeah.
if somebody doesn't know that going in. Like I try to put a flag for it, like an obvious flag right in the beginning of the story, but um I don't know. I don't know if you have this same issue. It's like you want to tell people look for this, but you shouldn't.
Yeah. Oh, I completely understand.
Yeah.
I'm just in my life, I'm someone who wants to be seen in a very particular way. And I've been sort of, talking with friends about this recently, which is kind of funny. So that translates to my writing, where it's like I want people to see exactly what I intended. But at the same time, like you said, with writing and with art, I'm also a visual artist and, photographer. It's like I want to put things into this, but I want people to get their own thing out of it because that's when you really get people to appreciate the art that you're putting out into the world when they can make a connection and it might not necessarily be the connection that you're making. So I find that when you're doing that, you want to pick out, okay, like what are the, most important couple things that I absolutely need people to know that will give them a positive experience of this and add depth to it. So I think that when you point out that Dante element, that is a good thing to say, that you're not saying specifically like when I say this I want you to think this. You're not nitpicking, right? But you're sort of saying think about when you read this, think about this general theme. And I don't think that that's a bad thing to do when you're discussing your own writing at all.
Yeah. So that's my explanation. Then it's a real
That's
retelling of Dante's Inferno. I'll leave it
Yeah.
at that, I guess.
Yeah, perfect. And it's funny you mentioned magic realism too, because I don't know if you watched my interview with Ian, but Ian and I
Hmm.
were talking
Oh
about
yeah.
that, and that's her favorite genre. And my mom, our editor, actually left a great list of reading recommendations in the comments that I was just looking at.
Hmm.
So I think that's going to be my next genre that I explore in a bigger way, just get into all the magic realism because I love that.
Yeah. I don't I'm not I don't have a formal education in when I went to way back in the day when I went to school, but when I was an undergrad, my first major was philosophy, and so I ended up
Okay, cool.
doing both philosophy and physics. But so I still to this day, I think that really I got my writing skills from majoring in philosophy,
Mm.
because it's pretty heavy, sophisticated writing usually.
Yeah.
But I don't have a formal education in writing, you know. And I totally forgot where I was going with that. Oh, so because I'm not haven't had any like classes or anything on this. I'm like a little. I feel like I'm pretty uneducated on literary topics,
Mm.
including like what different styles and genres and what how you refer to these things. So I don't
Hmm.
never know. I feel like the things that I write are mostly magical realism, but at other times I see other terms for them, that I feel like some of the stuff also fits in, like surrealism or slipstream, or like if it has a little bit of a like science, it's a fantasy, but it's still like a little bit of a science element. Like, does that
Yeah.
make it slipstream or is it magical realism? Like, I'm really not good with binning this
It's
stuff.
it is hard to define a genre, and when you say about the like classic education in that area, that's something that I deal with as well because I had a little bit of university but mostly fine arts, and I never got into that
Mhm.
whole like deep analysis of literature, and that's something that I've been trying to grow more being on YouTube and watching people and just sort of
Yeah.
learning in that way. Like all of my knowledge in the industry and stuff like that comes from like parents being in that industry, so it's very
Hmm.
like or organic and not academic. And I look at when Pei talks about philosophical topics or literature, and he's got it all down. I'm like, that's it's
Yeah.
so cool to be able to do that and like the level of discussion and stuff. But
Yeah.
like another thing with genres is that they seem to be evolving lately, and there also is more of an interest in that multi-genre thing rather than like pigeonholing yourself into one thing. Like, okay, I just do magic realism. So if you're finding a lot of different elements in your work, I think that's kind of a good thing, and people are going to enjoy that more. It makes it a bit more like more unique and appeal to a broader audience rather than your classic like okay this is just just Stephen King or something like that, someone
Yeah.
who's locked into that. So I think that's a good place to start out when you're working on your writing, to not be totally certain and just write what you want to write.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did when you say fine arts? So what did you study?
Well, so I was very anxious just to start working and doing things,
Uh-huh.
but I was very lucky that my parents put aside some money, so I had 2.5 years in fine arts at the
Okay.
University of Manitoba, like primarily studio classes because I
Okay.
do a lot of drawing and painting,
Okay.
and then after that I sort of realized that when you're going into that, it's really fun to learn those things and it helps your art skills, but it's funneling you into being an art professor. And that's not what I wanted to do. Like if
Mm,
you have a fine arts degree, you tend to teach fine arts, and that's what,
right.
what you do with it in a lot of cases. And so I took a year off and then I went into photography and got a photography certification that was like a year long. And I graduated that with like an honors certificate, and then I just went off and did my own thing. And I'm pretty much self-taught with everything that I do otherwise. Like when I was in
Mm,
fine arts, I did a little bit of literature and a little bit of film, but very minimal compared to what an actual degree would be. So I
mm,
loved learning, but I'm a very hands-on person. So that's what I wound up focusing on more.
mm. Okay. Yeah, that's why I dropped physics. I actually started off as a math physics major, and
Oh,
you
cool.
get to those upper level classes, and you realize you're either going into research or teaching,
Yeah.
and you understand in those classes who is going into research or teaching and who isn't.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't. And meanwhile I had this philosophy minor going and I was loving it. So I ended up graduating first with the philosophy degree. Then I went back. I wanted to become a patent lawyer. So then I went back and finished off the physics degree too. But um yeah, it's certain careers you're like, you know, you're gonna teach or there are limited options. You're not going
Yeah.
out into the you're not going out and into the too many options out in the real world with them. But
Yeah, there isn't as much variety in like a clear set career with something like
yeah,
fine arts. And it's funny because a lot of people I knew in my hometown, they would have parents who were like doctors or something like that, and they
yeah,
would try to push them into that. And I was the one weird one who had artist parents. So everyone in my family was just like, well, you go into fine arts. And then I was in it and thinking, I think I kind of like doing some business because I'm more entrepreneurial. So fine
yeah.
arts was just the default and I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't it wasn't the right thing career wise. It's something I would like to go back and maybe audit someday in the future, something like that, just to get the knowledge.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting how that goes. And
I did not
yeah.
realize until I was watching, I think it was Ian's
Mm.
interview, that Pamela was your mother.
Oh yeah. Well, we don't hide it, but we try not to
Right.
make it like a big thing
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, well, your mom is your editor. That's, it's weird that your mom's doing it because obviously she's going to like your stuff. But
Yeah.
since she is, a professional editor, she was the head of
Yeah.
the Editors Society in Manitoba. It's like, well, no, she gives me the hard truths I need to know,
Yeah.
and she's a great editor. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, my mom, it's a family thing, and our designer is my dad's wife, so we've
Oh,
got a bit of that going on.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that either.
I'm hoping to interview her at some point, but I think after the authors, we'll do sort of like an art design interview. It'll be fun. Um, yeah, I mean it's always a family affair with me. We're all artists. We're all
No, that's
weirdos.
great. That's
Yeah,
great.
no, it's great. It is great.
Yeah.
Um, so when you're oh, actually, I was going to ask you first. So you said you wound up going into law, just to sort of
Yeah.
wrap up on that topic in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I graduated the undergrad with a philosophy degree and
Hmm.
then went to law school because I like to read and debate,
Hmm.
coming out of philosophy, right?
It's good for that.
But then when I got there, I realized that, I, I, like most of my life, like it's like all these like winding accident, paths, and, when I got to law school, I'm like, oh, there's this patent law thing. That
Hmm.
seems kind of cool. I could like merge my interest in science with my interest in writing and debating. So
Yeah.
I went back in the summer. I only needed like a couple more classes to finish off that physics degree. So I went back while I was in law school. I went back in the summer and took summer classes to finish off that degree.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, then graduated and became a patent lawyer, which is what I've been
That's
doing.
that's cool how that comes together. And
Yeah.
learning that, I can also see how you put a lot of those elements into your story for the Stygian collection. I would
Mm.
have to say. I was going to ask also, do you have any, you said you put a lot of work into this one and I
Mm.
think it shows. So do you have any anecdotes related to the process of working on this that you'd want to share just about what went into this story, blood, sweat, and tears, that sort of thing?
Um, well, I mean, I was doped up on Percocet for some of the time. I don't know if
Yes,
that's
I remember you mentioned that. I was like, oh
yeah.
my God, he's working so hard on this.
Yeah. I mean, it was good and bad. I'd had
Mhm.
this foot ankle surgery, which
Mhm.
is like I did not expect to recover. I was like lying in bed for like 10 weeks. It was like very inconvenient.
Oof.
And so that was good and bad, right? Because I had time, but then also I was sleepy a lot. A lot of the time I was on medication and sleeping. So it was yeah, so it was good and bad, but that's what I so if you find a particularly creative or an inspiring part of the story, that's probably when I was, had just taken a pill. I don't know.
Sometimes that can be a really good state for writing. It's like,
Just just for the video record, I don't normally take Percocet, just so we're clear on that.
understood. And we're not recommending this. You know that old saying about, write drunk, edit sober. I feel like there's something to being in
Yeah.
that weird state of mind that can take you either very interesting or very bad places. Because I know
Yeah.
I've done some, I had major jaw surgery when I was younger, and the creative stuff I was coming up with while I was on, morphine was just some of it was like, oh, there's a good spark in there, and then you look at it and be like, this is just a mess. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's an interesting exploration. We had touched on this with I've been thinking on this. We touched on this with books, but being in this community, how has your YouTube experience affected your writing? Looking at things that affect writing.
Um, that's a good question. I guess it's definitely affected it in terms of the fact that it was fellow booktubers that got me to actually write for publication. Um, but I guess I mean certainly certainly it's educated me a lot. I think reading is always an education, right? Whether you're reading a
Hmm.
philosophy book or you're reading an insightful novel or whatever. I mean, you're always getting some kind of education from that, I think, unless I mean unless it's real trash. Um, but I not I think I it's very clear that some of these, now I've been in the community enough, right, that I do some buddy reads, right, where
Hmm.
we'll I don't know if you ever do buddy reads, but we'll like do buddy reads where we'll like, read like 4 chapters a day, let's say, and we'll
It's
talk
on
about
my
it on
list to do.
Discord. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'll do one with you. Pick a
Yeah.
book, I'll do one with you.
All right.
When you have some time.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, but
that'd be
that's,
great.
we'll like set a certain number of chapters each day, and then we'll just, talk for a few minutes on Voxer or
Hmm.
whatever at the end of the day on thoughts on the book. And I've also had some where we do a group read, and then I'll go and do a live with 1 or 2 people, and we'll talk about the themes and messages and symbolism in the book, and um, that has been a great experience doing those things because it has really caused me to think about these, like when you're thinking about what you're going to talk about, or even just when you're hearing it from the other people you're talking with, and you're really diving into the subtext behind a lot of these things.
Yeah.
um it really makes you just start thinking so much more deeply about the stuff that you're reading.
Hmm.
And I think I'm like a much not I think I know I'm a much smarter reader now than I was 3 years ago, just because I've just really learned to think so differently about what I'm reading and just do it with greater care and purpose. So it's that yeah. So I think that's really the main answer to your question, is that that's really a way I think it's changed me both in terms of reading, and that's I think impacted, like when I was writing the story, impacted the way I wrote that story, and what I put into that story in terms of subtext.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know personally when I read it, it's like it's very internal, right? And sometimes it's good to put your thoughts out there, and when you say them out loud, it's always a bit different, especially when you get feedback on them from other people, and it really helps you push deeper into the
Yeah.
things that you're exploring, and I think that's a great thing. It is one of the reasons why I would like to get into buddy reading more. Since there will be a cut here, I'm just going to say we had a brief technical difficulty, but we're back. And I was just about to say how I'm trying to get the Discord up and running more for the Stygian Society. That's something we're working on, and it'll be a place for readers and writers. And I think that it might be cool to set up a little buddy reading spot within that, so that
Okay.
we can all do more reading and examining of concepts.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. So I'm sorry, I'm so delinquent. It's up already, the Discord?
Yes, I'm actually going
Okay.
to send out an email to everyone. And for anyone who's watching this who is not an author, anyone can join. There are different,
Okay.
different labels. If you're a Stygian author, you'll have a little like gold tag and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
you can come in and readers can interact with authors. And we're going to be doing writing sprints throughout October and November, and hopefully onwards as well. So there will be writing, there will be reading, there will be stuff about books. People can talk to creators, share art. It's going to be hopefully a big creative hub.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Since we've been talking about community, one of my last couple questions is that how have you felt being part of an anthology? I know you've done this before, a community anthology, but how do you like being part of an anthology that involves the booktube and author tube community in this way?
Yeah, this is really neat. I'm glad to have been a part of it twice now. This
Mhm.
one, I have to say, is a lot more um community based maybe than the last one. I don't know what the right terminology is, but the last one we just submitted the stories, but then that was pretty much it.
Okay.
This one you've kept it pretty engaged, and you've been doing the interviews and had the joint live streams, and I'm sorry I couldn't make that second one. That was when I was in Disney, so
Oh, that's fine.
uh,
It's all good.
um but yeah, so it's been cool. And like I said, I haven't seen them all, but I've been watching like half of these interviews so
Mhm.
far. I'll eventually get to them all, but
There's a lot of
it's
us.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's been neat. Being part of this. You got to give yourself a pat on the back for all the work that you've done to, you know,
Oh,
um
thank you.
yeah, no, I mean it's really I should take this moment to say that if it's a lot of work, so I don't know if it's ever tiring or anything, but just take it from some somebody that's 50 now and hasn't really pursued the dream as much as they should have at this point. I look at somebody like you. I don't know how old you are, but you look very young to me.
34.
And 34. Okay, perfect. Still very young. And I look at somebody like you and I'm envious,
Mhm.
because for me, life got busy, right? And all of a sudden, here I am, 50, and now I'm still saying, okay, I still got to pursue this dream that I had, and really buckle down. But I'm 50 now, and you're making sure that you're taking the time to do it now while you're young, and you're like all in, right? You're like fully on
Yeah.
board. You're spending lots of time on lots of different pieces of this and trying to build community and everything. And it's trying to build this press. And it's just I don't want to make you blush, but it's impressive. You should give yourself a pat on the back, and don't stop, because you'll regret it when you're older if you do. So just keep pursuing the dream.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot because when you are like I've been doing this in different forms forever, and I have to say like a big thanks to my parents that that they're artists and they've always encouraged me, but it is kind of easy to get lost in the weeds, right? That it's just
Yeah.
sort of plowing forward and having phases of like burnout and stuff like that, but hearing something like that does mean a lot to know that I'm doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I also don't think it's, ever too late. I know that I'm going to be someone who's going to be working on stuff forever. And I think that's awesome that you are too. Like my mom, I will not embarrass her by giving her age because she hates when I do that, even though I always say, you don't look your age, you should brag about it.
Right.
But she's starting new ventures and, diving into things more. And I think that that's what keeps you young, right? Is if you keep working on your passions. I
Yeah.
think it's really
Yeah.
important to do that.
That's
And
true.
and you're doing awesome stuff.
Well, I just got to stay disciplined, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Heading into winding this up, since the publication is out into the world now, it has been for, oh gosh, I guess like we're heading up on a couple months now, which is
Yeah.
surprising. What have your expectations been for that, and how have you what have you thought of how it's been received and things like that so far?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's being received well, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's been cool, and the people even around here, the people that I've had, I'm not making them read the whole book, but at least read my story,
Yeah.
they like it. And so, yeah, it's been good. I'm like very, very happy that I submitted to this, and it's been a really gratifying experience. It's been really rewarding so
That
far, so I'm glad you guys put it together, and I'm really glad once again I was convinced to submit.
Yeah,
So
we're glad too, because we set out trying to create something that we would want to be a part of, and it's always just nice to know that that worked out, right? And I think
yeah,
it worked out even better than we could have hoped for. So I've been very happy with it, and I'm
yeah,
glad that you are too. And so far, everyone I've talked to is there isn't anyone who's like could have been a bit better. So
yeah,
it's
yeah. No,
always
I
good
was
to hear
gonna
at the end
say,
of a
right?
project.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Say every time you like, clearly every author, right, is really excited. You can tell from the interviews
Yeah.
and their Instagrams and everything. Every author that I've seen that's part of this collection has been very excited about it,
Hmm.
and very excited, very happy with how things have gone with it. So,
It's been
um,
so fun to see it come together,
yeah,
and I hope that we can keep that energy going in some way, and especially going into spooky season. It's a great
yeah,
season for the anthology, so I think we're going to have like another resurgence of stuff, and I'm trying to come up with some cool promo to do, so we'll see what
yeah,
happens there.
yeah.
Wrapping up our
Okay,
interview before Zoom decides to kick us off again.
right.
I always like to end things just by giving you a bit of a platform and let us know about what you're working on, what you have, any writing, what you're doing on your channel, what we can look forward to from you as we move forward.
Um, yeah, as far as the channel, maybe I didn't mention it before. The channel's name is Book Blather.
Yes, I think I
Um,
said it at the beginning, but
oh,
then I
did you? Okay.
quickly I quickly moved on to Olive because she's just so appealing.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so we have fun. Olive, it's a silly channel. So, I mean, sometimes we're just talking about the book, sometimes we're trying to be silly, but we try to have fun. And Olive is definitely the bigger star of the channel. So she's definitely more popular than I am, but we try to have fun. So yeah, come check it out. We recently passed 1,000 subs, so that was pretty
Oh
exciting.
yeah, congrats.
Yeah, thanks. So and as far as writing, have I don't really have anything to say for people to look out for yet. But hopefully soon, because now we really are energized now. So we are working on a couple things actually. We're in the middle of two short stories that we're going to be submitting to stuff. And we are working what I think is going to be end up being a novella.
Ooh.
Started out as a short story, and then I hit all of a sudden I'm at 15,000 words and barely started. So I'm like, okay, I
Mm.
guess it's not a short story anymore. So hopefully it's not going to be longer than a novella, but
Well, if it is,
that
then you've got a novel.
that one's called All Bottled Up, but that's still got a lot of work to do on it. So it'll be a little time before we have anything else going out there, but we're working on it.
Very cool. And I mean, I'm going to follow your progress, and I will, of course, be putting all your links in the description so other people watching can follow your channel and what you're working on. And I can't wait to see what you put out next for writing because I love what you submitted to the collection, and I think that everyone else who reads it will as well.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, thanks so much for doing this, Holly. This was fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for being a part of it. And
Okay.
thank you for letting me chat with you tonight. I think it's been a really nice talk. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And enjoy the rest of your evening and give Olive lots of cuddles. And we'll talk again soon.
Will do.
Bye.
Bye.